Muratbekova-Touron. Please, the stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Didar and Ghalamjan. Ghalamjan, it's very impressive what you're doing as an association. So unfortunately, I learned it very late in my career about this association, but it's better late than never. And I'm truly honored that you came, for those who are in Europe, came after work on Friday. I'm completely impressed, actually. And those who are in Kazakhstan. So I will share my slides. And I thought, okay, they are coming to listen to me. I hope, but Galjan was saying, amazing speaker. I'm not so sure, but I hope so, that you would enjoy the talk. So what I wanted to say before presenting, so I will present very briefly my path, the career path, and some reflexive thoughts about it. But I thought that maybe speaking about my latest paper published recently, last year, about how PhD students cope with adversity in doing their PhD would be the most interesting article for you, because as the audience is very, very different. So I tried to find the topic not in human resource management or something, very specific, but which can be relevant to all of us. Yeah, by the way, I forgot that I can speak Russian, but that's fine. I think we will switch anyway. So I'm working now at ECP Business School, which is a multi-campus school. So we have campuses in London, Madrid, Turin, and Berlin as well. So I'm based in Paris. So I like the school very much. It's very international and European, like by nature, etc. So, but before, how did I mean, come here? So I started with NGU, and now it's called a bit differently, I think, Новосибирский государственный университет in Академгородок, and I actually have chosen the picture that reflects the old building. Now it's not, it doesn't exist anymore, actually. When I looked at because my classmates, they sent me the pictures of the new building, that I don't like it, but that's fine. So actually, I am now in human resource management, but I started by mathematics, and I was in the faculty of pure mathematics, чистики we were called. So 5 years of mathematics, and then you see it was in the Soviet Union. And then when I was back, it was already independent Kazakhstan. And at the time, this university was called Institute, Казахский политехнический. Wow, I forgot. So I taught there for 3 years mathematics as assistant professor. But I know those who remember, the salary was miserable. There was a change from ruble to tenge. And unfortunately, or I now think it's fortunately, I don't have any skills in making, how to call it, коммерсант, commercial skills. I wasn't able, to negotiate something, to go somewhere to buy and then sell it at a better price and gain money. So I'm a pure, product of professional family. I love learning very much. I'm very good at it, but I'm completely unadapted to this kind of transition period. It was very funny. So one of my colleagues at this Polytechnical University now, she was saying, Maral, let's go to KIMEP, and try to change our life. And I said, I don't have any money. I don't have any rich relatives to help me to study there. She said, let's apply first, and then we'll see what's happening. And we applied, and we were in. And actually, I'm very grateful to Soros Foundation, which is, by the way, sometimes is very much criticized because they say, I don't know what they're doing, but I'm very grateful to George Soros because this foundation paid everything in my MBA. The MBA, it was the first MBA in Kazakhstan in English, provided by professors from foreign countries. And our dean was from HEC Business School in Paris. And he said, who would like to do a PhD? And I was interested in PhD, but I didn't speak French. And he said, it's not a problem. You will learn on the place and you can start in English. So that's how I applied, and that's how I ended up at HEC in Paris doing research in international human resource management, which is nothing to do with mathematics, and which is funny. I'm not even doing the quantitative papers, to use my skills in stats or something like this. I'm doing it purely qualitative papers, based on interviews and this kind of thing. So, and then Galamjan told me that maybe give us some aha moments. And actually, it's not the aha moments because it's not like a sudden, revelation of something, but it's more about my reflection about my career. So when I left Kazakhstan and I had explicit comments from some people saying, you leave, you create the brain or you participate or you contribute to the brain drain. And I carried this, sense of guilt that I'm leaving my country and maybe I'm never going back. And I never worked in Kazakhstan since then. So some countries lose brains, some countries gain them. But then what I realize and what I tell to all of you, we wouldn't be able, especially at this time, now it's changing. Nazarbayev University provides something else, KIMEP University as well. But at the time when I left, it was 26 years ago or 27, I don't remember. There was no platform, no training for us to do what I'm doing now. So actually, my first article published in a top journal was about Kazakhstan, grows on Kazakhstani data. I was the only author of this, but then I've met Dana Minbaeva, who was your guest in this series. And we have written, I think, several articles, 4 or 5 on Kazakhstani data as well. One of them, for example, on clanism and its impact on human resource management. So what I'm saying, because we left Kazakhstan and had this training, but we are working with Kazakhstan, and we actually published something on a level that I don't see any Kazakhstani scholar based in Kazakhstan who published something, at least in my field in management, who is not working outside of Kazakhstan, what I see. And we challenge global audience to engage with our stories, so we make Kazakhstan known as well. So in this sense, and with my PhD student, I had one PhD student from Kazakhstan as well. By the way, I'm looking for a Kazakhstani PhD candidate because, patriotically speaking, I would like to have someone from Kazakhstan in management. If you have friends or I don't know, spread the word. If they want to study in Paris, they're very welcome to contact me. So what I'm saying, Dana, another Dana from Kazakhstan, my PhD student, we wrote an article about the careers of Volashak students or graduates. And there were 2 elements when they were back in Kazakhstan after studying abroad. So one, they were missing international aspect of the job, those especially who were working in the purely Kazakhstani companies. And another point was some of them, not all of them, but many, I can say many of them, when they went back, they realized that the level of development of the subject that they studied abroad is not on the same level. Or there were even some Volosha graduates saying there is nothing on what I'm doing in Kazakhstan. So they somehow managed to, to work back their studies, but then they left anyway. So our conclusion in this article was, shall we think not about brain drain or brain gain, but about brain flow? Let people leave the country because it will be beneficial to this country anyway one day. So now I'm not feeling guilty anymore. And I invite you not to feel guilty neither. I think it will be great anyway for Kazakhstan. Another moment that I wanted to share with you, but maybe you are already aware, but when I started, I'm a very independent person. So when I wrote my first 4 articles, I was alone as an author. But then I've met Dana at one of the international conferences. She works in Copenhagen. She worked in Copenhagen at that time. Now she's in King's College. And we said, shall we write something together? And I discovered that it's much faster, it's much more interesting. There is a synergy level, etc. So since then, I've never worked alone. Actually, I have different co-authors. Then the problem is, of course, it's sometimes difficult to find someone with whom you have a very good fit. You work together well. For example, with Dana, we are very, very complementary. Ayjan, who is present there in this Ayjan, thank you very much. You didn't have to come, but anyway, she's also working in international in human resource management. She works in Italy, and one day we will write an article together as well about Kazakhstan, by the way. So the collaborations are crucial. This is very important, and that's what helps you to cope with everything. And then now I am at the stage of my career that all my collaboration, not all, but the majority of them are more on the mentorship. So when I write with someone, mostly PhD students, I help them. So they learn with me how to write a good article, publishable in a good journal. So this is also something very important. And then also you asked the question, how was the academia when I started? And it was very, 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 very different when I started. So in HEC, which is considered as one of the best French schools, when I started as a PhD student, we didn't have any publication pressure. It started now. Now it's a nightmare. But at one point, I published my first articles not because I had the pressure, but because I thought, okay, I wrote something. Why should it be wasted and, лежать в этом, как это называется, в ящике, да?
Чувак,
So
видите?
I decided, so I have to publish it, so people have to read it in a way. So it was a purely, naive intention, but lucky, I was very lucky they were published. And I think it's much easier to publish when you are not stressed rather than now when you have this publish or perish ideology. So I try to, when I have my PhD students, I try to help them a lot. And I say, okay, let's write one or two articles together so you know how to do this. And then you can do your solo article if you wish. But I train them on doing this. So this is one moment. Now, so you understood that my journey was completely non-linear, mathematics, then HRM, and then I'm teaching management. Of course, I teach HR as well, but I also teach something which is completely different. And please don't be afraid of changing your subjects and the areas of research if you are doing research. In my career reflexivity class with master students or with PhD students, some of my master students, they are so stressed saying, if I don't choose a right internship now, then my career is like, wow, it won't be right. I said, okay, you have at least 45 years in front of you. Please de-stress, relax. You can change your career all the time, many times in your life, and this is normal, and that's how it should be done. So, and when I invite guest speakers, for example, to HR class or to other classes, I try to choose those who changed already several times their topics. So, for example, the graduates from our ECP Business School, and the last one, she came and she started in marketing. She did a great career, but then she was fed up and she changed the strategy. And then finally now she's doing HR and she's happy with this. And she tells about it to my students. So speaking about the changing of the subject. And this is quite similar, but not very similar. When I started my academic career as a PhD student or as an assistant professor, when I was attending academic conferences, the overall discourse was, and it still is, by the way, is that you have to be expert in one domain and then you have to be known in this domain so that in case if someone looks for you, so for example, I don't know, you are studying, let's say, organizational citizenship or identity. So people who work on this, they have to automatically think, this is this person. My problem, or I don't consider it as a problem actually, but as an advantage, I'm very quickly bored after, looking at one area. So I started with international HRM, with the practices in multinational companies, how it's happened, etc. But then, okay, I switched to talent management. Then I switched to informality. With Dana, we wrote a very different, well, for me, interesting articles about the informality, informal networks, and these kind of things. Of course, in line with HR, but still. Then I switched to reflexivity. Like you will hear now the paper about the resilience. This is why my first and maybe the last paper on resilience, but this was something interesting. And now I'm working with craft. By the way, I'm writing the paper about Dombra, just in case, in Kazakhstan, the Dombra makers, etc. So in response to those people who say you have to be very focused and stay in one line, I say yes, if you wish. It's completely okay. But if you change the topics, of course, when you change the topic, it's costly because you have to learn the new literature. You have to, but on the other hand, it creates the bridges and you become much more creative, actually. I'm now even thinking with Aijan, by the way, to do interdisciplinary research, something, maybe, I don't know, history and the impact of, with management or something like this. So please don't be afraid of changing. And even, I even, and envisager, it's a French word, envisage, do we say it in English? Yeah, envisage, like foresee the collaborations, even, let's say with neuroscientists and management. I think it would be amazing. So change as soon as, as much as you want. So these my reflexive moments, not aha, but I do hope that. So now I wanted to present you the paper, and you see there are many, many authors, and I explain why. And this is linked to the mentorship version. So how it all began, it was like already 4 years ago. I opened a PhD elective course on Joya method. Joya method is a method how to analyze the qualitative data, so based on interviews. And some professors teach it as like in a classical way. And I said I would like to do something when they collected interviews and we code all together on the data. And I announced the elective. I had 6 PhD students enrolled. I have one professor who is my friend. She said, I would like to work with you. I said, come to my class. And then, so we were 8 in the beginning. And I selected a topic that engages all PhD students in class because they were from different areas, not necessarily even in HR. Some was in strategy, another one was in something else. So in entrepreneurship. So let's ask our PhD students and alumni of our school as well, alumni of the PhD program, how do they cope with difficulties in the PhD journey? And I said, if you collect interesting data, we try to do a publishable paper. And actually, in a way, it was great. But it's also, I had this, how do you say, on my shoulders. I was wearing a, how do you say it? Короче, давила на меня that, that I promised something, so now I have to publish something with them. So this was interesting. So the context was, so we often praise resilience as a strength. But what if resilience becomes the very thing that exhausts us? So most of us in academia have at some point told ourselves, it's fine, I'll have to push it through. But what do we lose when it becomes the norm? And unfortunately, now it's the norm in many programs. And I do hope that you are not experiencing this. So yeah, by the way, Mathilde, one of the PhD students who participated in this elective, she said, shall we also ask what are the joys of doing PhD? I said, yeah, that's great. Let's not focus only on the difficulties, but we do both. So I will show you the both, but I will start with something horrible, actually. It was not shocking, but I was quite surprised to see, because I didn't remember these horrible stories from my PhD when I was younger. But yeah, I had two children during my PhD, and clearly for me, family was the first, and PhD was secondary. And I think it's helpful because many my PhD students, when they start the journey with me, I tell them, don't feel guilty I mean, because this is the case actually. And I can say that all of my PhD students, except one, had at least one baby during their PhD. So I'm pushing them, saying, I mean, you are young, you have to do it now and not waiting, because after that you will have your tenure, and then there is something else, and it's never the right time. But don't be afraid of doing this. So when we were talking to the PhD students, our last question was, could you give us your thoughts or the association in the art? You know, it could be the song, the book, the picture, whatever, with which you associate your PhD journey. And I was, as I said, very, very surprised to see a very dark picture. You know, you see this Guernica by Picasso, which is like, wow. The most impressive one with this Purgatory by Borges, you see it on the right. Balzac, Illusion Perdue, it's the Lost Illusion, and we put it in the text. One of we gave, by the way, the anonymous names. So she was saying, I had pictured myself as a fulfilled woman after the PhD, one who has a job that she loves, who is a researcher, who publishes and lives in another country, who has stability and is recognized in her field. And it's been 2 years since the defense, and it's not the case. It was like, wow. But the most one, this one, the story of a life, we didn't put in the paper because it was too dark. I don't know if you read this book. It's a very impressive book, but it's a very dark book. It's Aaron Appelfeld. He's Jewish, and he escaped from the concentration camp, Konzentrationslager. And he lived for 6 or 7 years in the forest, alone, hiding from everyone. And one of the PhD students associated their PhD journey with this. I said, wow. So, you know, when we did our first draft on the dark side of the PhD, I got all the time emotional when I was reading because it was so interesting. And then, interesting, I mean, sad. And you see, even this Venice. I think the picture is called The Birth of Venice by who was it? Botticelli, I think. Um, it's beautiful, but the way how she describes it, it was not the beauty of it that she associates. She said, when I looked at this picture, and I was a PhD student in the museum, I don't remember where she saw it. She said, what I saw is the nakedness and the vulnerability. So what she sees in this picture is not the beauty, it's vulnerability. It's just to say to you how difficult this was for them. So I'm starting with the dark version as well. So I will skip the theory, but the main point is that in all academic literature, many people, many academics, they praise resilience, saying that it's a very positive thing. There are some people who start to explore the dark side, but there is a very clear call to study this part. So we asked the research question in our paper was, how do PhD management students build resilience in coping with adversity, and what are the costs of the dark side? So I won't bother you with all this theory coding, and I will show you just the results, and then if you have questions, we will speak. So we see resilience not only as a capacity, but also as a process. And then we will also have a look at the outcome of the resilience. So what we noticed, or what we not noticed, but after the analysis, we saw that those people who have this individual, what we call resourcefulness. What is this? They cope with the adversity much better than others. So what is this? It's if you have already a prior experience in doing whatever you do, in this case, it's academics. For example, I don't know, we have PhD students coming from professorial family. Her mother did the PhD, her grandfather did the PhD. They talk a lot about their job at home, so they are familiar with all these, paradoxes of our life, the publish and perish situation, and this kind of thing. Some of them had relevant relational experience, know some academics, maybe even published before in being enrolled in PhD. And or having prior personal adversity experience, not necessarily linked to the academic world, but we had some people who had a very difficult personal journey before, and they coped with this. And for them, the academic difficulties, of course, they are the difficulties, but it's not as dramatic as it could be elsewhere. So these are people who live through all of this. They have this individual resourcefulness and they cope much better with what's happening in PhD after that. Then, of course, you have to have social resources, and which is interesting. And I never thought about it when I was doing my PhD, but they were completely right. And I think you feel it as well. When you talk to your friends, I don't know, do you talk about your PhD subject? I mean, sometimes it's completely impossible, even in human resource management, which is completely, I don't know, understandable for everybody. We are always treated as soft skills, sometimes pejoratively, it's not mathematics, etc. But still, when you are writing an article, there is a theory, you have to contribute to theory. It's very, very specific. You have this academic language, it's not understandable to others. They don't understand what are you struggling with. It's like, so this impossibility to speak about what you are doing every day, this was a very difficult moment, not moments, but the process for everyone. And some of them, I will show you later, they withdraw themselves from these conversations. And this is very important, but you have to have this support from family and friends. Not, of course, you can't talk, but at least, in a different way. And of course, this is crucial, but this is quite obvious. You have to have organizational support. If you have a horrible PhD supervisor, then you can already say goodbye to your PhD. But then even in terms of administrative, if the PhD program is the directors, administrators are not very helpful. It's not easy. So I will skip this. This was the coding. And then let's speak about the bright side as well. In resilience building, so in this process, we've seen it's not like some use bright, some use dark. It can be the mixture, or some started with the dark practices, but then they moved to the bright practices. So it's kind of difficult to disentangle them. But we try to just clearly identify what is this. So this is the first one is putting things into perspective. So when, for example, on the annual PhD evaluation we have in our department, the PhD students, they have to present their progress every year in front of the professors and other PhD students. And of course, everybody starts to, criticize. It's criticizes that positively speaking, some maybe even harsh. But to help this person, we give our comments. And some of them are putting this into perspectives, understanding, yes, you are right, maybe I have to change, maybe not, but still, we need the failure to progress, because the success doesn't exist if we didn't have any failure at one point. So, it's like a kind of bricks. But some people, they were not able to put these things into perspective. If I can say, I have an example of a PhD student who was completely in tears after the presentation. But from my side, it was very positive, by the way. But because her saying was, how dare they to criticize me? So she didn't want to accept any, improvements into her PhD. The organizing, it's a very important moment, and it was very funny to observe different ways of how people organize. It doesn't mean that there is one best way, but let's say one PhD student, she was saying, it's very clear for me the weekend I don't work, Another one saying, it's completely fine for me to work on the weekends, but I have to be flexible during the week. Another one was saying, I know that I'm the morning lark, Javaronek. So I am working very well in the morning. So he came to the office, the PhD office at 8 o'clock. He works till 10 on his PhD. And then everything else, like teaching, administrative stuff, or whatever, he's doing in the afternoon because he knows himself. He knows how to organize. Another one starts her every day with the 1 hour meditation, and we were amazed, saying, "Oh, you have time." I said, "No, I need it because if I don't do this, I'm not able to continue." Interacting is a very, very important part. You have to, my PhD supervisor, when I started my PhD, he was saying PhD journey is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you have to run, and you run alone. And I actually don't completely agree with him. You don't run alone. You have to interact not only with your PhD supervisors, but with your peers, with the other PhD students, with professors, with other professors, with, I don't know, people whom you meet. And that's why it's very important when I was saying that you can't speak about your PhD topic and this is, to progress with your friends and family, but you can speak with your peers. And that's how, for example, when PhD students come to me, they send me something in advance, so that I read what they wrote. And they say, okay, now talk to me. So tell me, what did you write? Which is interesting. Sometimes what they say, it's not what they send me in advance in a written form. Because when you tell something, actually, there is something happening as well. So it's a reflection. So you need to speak. So this is a very important part. And of course, the self-caring. Some people were saying that I'm just like evacuating all my stress and aggressivity with, hitting the ball, playing tennis. Some people are doing meditation, as I said, yoga, dance, whatever, but you have to have these hobbies. By the way, one of your question, Galambrand, when you sent to me, do you have a hobby? Yes, I do. Like, I'm doing modern jazz, but this is a quite recent dancing, meaning hobby, like 3 years ago, before I did yoga, but so I try to do something, and it's very important. So now let's start with, and then just to say that the positive effect would be your positive attitude and a performance and eventually success. No, not necessarily, but still. Dark sides. You have this, I have to push it through. This is enduring. You are just, in a way, maybe it's an opposite of putting things into perspective. So I'm just suffering in silence and continuing. And you can't do, and which is interesting, they were thinking that this is a right way to be a resilient person. In the same way, when they thought that withdrawing should be done now, because if I don't withdraw myself, I knew some PhD students who were working alone the whole week, non-interacting with with anyone, alone, writing the whole day, saying that's I'm more efficient. I'm not distracted by any interactions, even with my peers. And yes, they were providing, but the cost of this providing is very, it's huge. Its impact on health, back problems, headaches, poor sleep. We have so many symptoms that they were describing, saying this is the consequences of my PhD journey, which is also, thinking. So withdrawing is really, they think it's helpful, but it's maybe helpful in very, very short term, but in the medium or long term, it's very, very damaging. And many of them, they were using consuming, clearly saying that they consumed different things during their PhD, but not outside of it. In consuming, we have examples of alcohol, of course, smoking, but also some like, I wouldn't say funny because it's not funny, but one of them was saying, I use a lot of chewing gums. Another one, but not when she was before or after, because half of our sample is the alumni who already finished their PhD. Some drank Coca-Cola, which they considered as something unhealthy in their normal life, but during the PhD they consumed a lot. Some consumed, meaning how to say, the shopping, compulsive shopping, when they were unable to stop and they were going and buying things. And one was specialized in the buying pajamas, so which is interesting. So, and the impact on health was huge. And in our previous version of the paper, when it was in the revision, we even put 2 cases of cancer, and then the reviewer said, remove it, because you can't prove that it is because of the PhD. I said, okay, we removed it, but like we left the psychosomatic anyway. And you have negative emotions, and you've seen the pictures. I mean, how can you do your PhD during 4 or 5 years and associated with Guernica or purgatory? And I mean, it's so like sad. And isolation, as I said, because of the withdrawing. Yeah. So this is the sad paper, but I was very happy that the paper was published, because I think it's impactful, because it's read a lot. We have a lot of downloads, and we start to have some citations already, even if it was published not so long ago. But I was very, very happy for the PhD students, because they were on the job market with the paper which was published in the top journal. The problem is that there were too many, like 7, because one PhD student dropped during the process. He said, I don't want to continue with the paper. So this is their slide, because we presented the paper to different audiences. That they created this slide, what they learned from this. And so they were saying that it demystified the publication process, because I showed them how to submit, what are the reviewing process, how to respond to reviews, how to engage with the editor, etc. So they were very happy to come from apprentice to published author status, learning to be versatile and flexible, because they were working on the topic which was completely different from the topic of their PhD students. But as I was saying, it creates the bridges, and it boosts your creativity, and it helps them to be more productive in their own field. Discovering the collective research and co-authorship with the pros and cons. We had some free riders, of course. So for me, it was the first article that, in management, it's not like in medicine where you have like 100 authors. I'm exaggerating, but still, in management articles, we have like 2, 3, 4. It's already a lot. We are 7. So managing all these people with all their tensions, some people worked more, some less. It was kind of difficult. And but I'm very proud of my mentorship in this sense. The paper is interesting, and we have 5 PhD students happy with this process. And they also developed a different approach to the dark side of the PhD students. Now they're very, very attentive when they see some people whom they think that they are in this dark side. They try to help them, and also to develop the bright practices. Okay, I don't know what time is it. I think we are good. So I stop sharing maybe.